In a Dominions game, sacreds are something that define a lot of the gameplay. They define the matchups, the names. As time has gone on, that has only become more true. Within the newest release of Dominions, the balance of what builds you see, what builds are strong, have dramatically altered. But ultimately, the way you deal with sacreds is the same. Every sacred's like a puzzle that you have to solve how to beat as your nation. This video is going to go over some random assorted sacred builds that would often roll over a Scales nation without a sacred that can counter it, and ways to handle them, and ways to figure out on your own how to handle a sacred build. Try for speed. We're going to be going a little bit quickly. Let's see what we can get into. Now, in this situation, this is a Shiniyama army. Of course, it's miscellaneous, doesn't necessarily win 100% of the time, but opposing it is a Bless, Enchanted Blood, Unbearable Splendor, Dark Vision, right? And they roll the threat. Absolutely house. We go over here. Similar situation. A different Abyssia build, Ethereal, right? This isn't the bark skin you always see, Blood Bond, because why have everything be the same? Rolls through the troops. Easy clean house of the Bakemono show. And sure, these Lava Warriors are worth more, right? But the casualty to number ratio is at an extreme degree. Over here, another example. Bunch of Anakites with their resist, not prop blood surge, rolling through a bunch of troops. In these situations where you have these armies kind of walking towards you, and these different blesses, you have to look at what a bless includes and doesn't include to figure out the solution as a nation. We're going to do a quick exercise real quick, and then I will go over variable solutions. We go look at the Ethereal Bless. Ethereal is very simple, right? Abyssia Sacreds like this, they're killy, right? When they berserk, you wait till they berserk. They have 20 proc, 15 attack, 0 defense skill, right, if they're getting harassed. So they're not very defensive, but they kill very quickly. They're ethereal, so they have to be hit by magic weapons, right, 75% of the time. And they're immune to fire and kill stuff in an AoE around them. Therefore, as playing Shiniyama, you need to find a solution to these that lets you kill them effectively. And these are ultimately the sacreds that took the most casualties. You look at the knights, right? They have Unbearable Splendor, Dark Vision, Enchanted Blood. Spirit Vengeance 11 versus MR, right? That means you need to up your MR and bring something that's killy enough to kill these. Or use spells, and that's really one of the key aspects in this, which is your magic. Magic is often the equalizer for sacreds, because most builds that bring a sacred of some form sacrifice the build in other ways, whether they don't have positive scales or they have negative scales, which removes their ability to adapt as effectively as innate scales, right? They do, of course, have the raw power bonus from their sacred, but they lose the ability to adapt the way a scaled nation has because they have less resources, especially for their first war. After the first war, Bless builds will try to match Scales builds by having more land, because they've been quicker, they snowball. In this case, Body Ethereal, Fire Res, like we talked about, the solution that is easiest will likely be something associated with another type of elemental damage, whether it's poison, frost, lightning, some other form of elemental damage. That is what is the assumed counter. Now, countering these things doesn't also always involve getting specific research. Sometimes it's just problem solving with the tools available to you. This Shiniyama had a hard time expanding. It just has Construction 1. Alchemized its gems to make enchanted pikes. Expensive, inefficient, and that's one of the key things is when you're halting the rush, it's often inefficient for you. But losing the units is often worse for the other nation, right? And so what they have done, they've taken Dai Bakemono with longbows, some O Bakemono, and some Shark Yari, for Shu and Doji, right? Nothing special here, but the Shu and Doji have high MR, right? Something which helps deal with the eventual bless of these, which gives Sight Vengeance versus 11. Therefore, when the sides clash, the O Bakemono and the Bakemono show absorb the charge. The Bakemono archers give chip damage, and then the sacreds put to sleep and pike down by the Shu and Doji. leading to an eventual victory. As in Melee, these are still effective combats. And that is a simple cause and effect. Now I'm going to go do that with the other two, but these are just examples of ways you can handle what seem like inopportune threats, because we could have spammed much chaff and Dai Bakemono as we wanted, but we'd still lose. But by diversifying the tools we use and looking at what the issues with the bless are, where the holes are, right, then you can counter in a variety of ways. The better the blesses, or the more expensive the blesses, I should say, the less ways there are to counter it. That bless wasn't that, like, it's not the end of the world expensive, right? But it's also very specific in what it does. That bless could have been countered through spamming skeletons, ice magic, right? You're casting cold bolt, freezing mist, fire spells. There's a bunch of ways to handle it. But on the other side, it's also much less expensive than the bless we're going to be following at the end. Ethereal. Ethereal is one of those blesses that will run over someone who's unprepared for it, especially with the rarity of magic weapons, or used to be almost universal. But also doesn't do anything to a variety of the later magical forms of damage while being cheap. And I don't mean cheap in that the cost itself of Ethereal is little, but often Ethereal is something you take, and that's the bless, right? The bless is an Ethereal build, because it's an on or off switch. It's not partially working. In this situation, there's a couple solutions at work to deal with Ethereal on Sacreds that should win this fight with it. The first one is a little bit of Flaming Arrows. Flaming Arrows, believe it or not, is good against ethereal beings because of the fact it makes your missiles magical damage. That's really what you care about here. It lets your archers actually deal damage effectively. The other big one is one of my favorite tools against Sacreds. It's Frost Drakes. Any Drake of that matter, but Frost seems to be the one that makes the most sense often enough. Someone doesn't have cold res, right? Cold evos take a little bit to get going. You'll see this guy's going to cast a couple cold bolts, right? A little bit of an attempt to do some damage. But even these two Drakes, as long as you hold them behind your line, are capable of dealing much more damage than anyone else, right? They go through as the engagement begins. The infantry do a little bit of damage, but the Drakes deal more, wiping out whole rows of them, while the Flaming Arrow archers and the infantry do very little. Sure, you hit your own men, right? But each of your guys is worth much less than one of these, especially if you consider the fact you are making these out of all your forts, when your opponent is only making his out of his cap. You're dealing with these Sacreds, right? And they don't have any overwhelming vulnerabilities. They have every res. They're harder to kill. They get bonus snap proc because of hard skin. They actually have better stats because of Blood Surge. Some are afflicted, but some are XP starved, right? And you're like, how do you handle this? I will be bland. I tried this with a couple different methods. And that's one of the things with Sacreds is, and what I will talk about later, is it doesn't always work. I tried this with just summoned ogres, right, which are practically Obakemono, like the big, strong guy, and they just got beat. Now, sure, I was also fighting more Sacreds, right? I didn't account for the change in Sacreds in this game, 53 HP for the Anakite. Crazy. But they roll through it. But the solution is something ultimately quite predictable, right? If someone's Sacred focuses on halting magical damage, then it's not equipped for halting physical. And just casting Gift of Giant Strength on these units dramatically increases their ability, improves their ability to deal considerable damage. You can see they're doing 33 damage with their Nodachi. A lot of damage. And sure, they're getting 1 hit, 2 hit by the Sacreds. But their Nodachi are striking back. 23 damage. Right? We open the unit log. You look, these guys are dying. What? So are these. Obakemono, 18. Damage roll 35 because of the strength buff, right? Ogre, 34. Dai Bakemono, 28 because of the strength buff. You're still not going to win it, like, efficiently, but because of the way Sacreds work, especially giant Sacreds with their double cost, you'll trade in, right? It'll work. These are more expensive, right? You summon ogres, you recruit Obakemono, and every nation kind of has its thing. But you can kind of beat this, right? But you go in like this. Look at this situation, right? Come in. And you didn't summon the ogres, right? You just have the troops. You're not casting the gift of giant strength. Even as they're starred, the giants roll up and they cut through. Sure, they lose some, but that's to spells, right? That's to venomous death from the mage. But like blatantly, they surge through. And yes, I know this doesn't have poison rest. I know. Ultimately, on both ends, it's like a puzzle. When you're designing your build, right, you're figuring out what scales you're willing to take, how far you're willing to dump, whether you want scales. And then you're making a bless to either accentuate the advantages of your sacred, right? Focus on what makes it strong, or remove its weaknesses or reduce them, make it where the sacred is less vulnerable. And most people have a methodology or a design in their mind. The person I know named Thoron tries to only focus on the advantage, right, on what they want the sacred to do. But ultimately, you're trying to take a unit, expensive or cheap, and make it better in a way which improves its effectiveness. And part of that is you make the bless planning for what's going to be used against it. That's why you very often, especially in Dom 5, right, see a powerful giant bless and it has shock res when it costs 3. Because one of the biggest solutions to those big targets was Lightning Bolt, early evocation spell. And as the nation, your responsibility is the same thing. If you're, or I shouldn't say your responsibility, what you need to do to counter it is the same thing. You're looking at the tools you have as a roster. You have poison, you have glamour, you have some water and earth in combination with nature. You've got a variety of tools you can use. You've got some fire. You've got guys with big swords. You've got great swords, right? In fact, one of the most common solutions to sacreds is can opener sacreds. You take a sacred, stack attack and strength. But ultimately, because nobody could defend against anything, you can look in this list of spells here. Like, oh, web for defense stacking. Poison of some form, poison cloud, right? Let's hit them with cloud of dreamless slumber, make them go to sleep. It doesn't have to be evocations. You meld them, right? Earth meld. You buff your own troops, strength buffs, items, right? Items is a really good solution. And you use these different tools in an attempt to counteract what the enemy bless does. But you won't always succeed, right? Because that's the other person's trying to do the same thing. And sometimes someone, I'll be honest, sometimes someone is dumped enough on a nation where that your nation with your build isn't likely to be able to find a solution that works. However, why not try, right? And the best way to try isn't to bash your head against the wall. Sacreds are like puzzles. And really, use some problem solving. You gotta at least try to solve it. You know what I mean? Because I've died to sacreds a lot of times, but there's also been times where you find the solution. You find that the frost drakes that you quickly rush up to will handle their sacreds because they lack cold res. Even though you don't have a lot of water, your pretender has it. You just make a couple, right? You just need to delay the threat. Oh, you realize, they forgot to take Dom 5, right? They forgot to take the res, the poison res, and you poison cloud them, or you hit them with sleep cloud. Oh, they don't have a way to kill chaff. You spam skeletons. Like, not even with skelly spam, that's further down. You reanimate, right? It's all about finding solutions to problems. It's like Sudoku, it's like a puzzle. Just find the solution and attempt to make it work. Good luck in your game. May you enjoy them.